Hi, this is Joseph Arthur. Thanks for checking out Come to Where I'm From. Please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/come to where I'm from. We are an independent podcast, and any contributions you can make are greatly appreciated. How does that happen? Like, if that's what they do,
yeah,
that'd be like Starbucks making you an iced coffee, but it's lemonade.
Okay, yeah.
You know, and it's like, wait, what the fuck? Like, you guys make coffee. I don't get it.
You can start it that way if you want to. That's a good line. It's like Starbucks.
Yeah.
Making you a coffee,
okay,
but
we're
it's
back
lemonade.
on the record.
Wow.
Yeah. It's like Starbucks making you a lemonade.
Something like that.
That's a good lyric.
Yeah. If I was a songwriter, maybe I'd do something with it.
Uh-oh. So, but you are a songwriter, right? Do you actively write songs all the time, or what's your practice with it?
No, I write them kind of sporadically,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how it's always been. And I started writing songs in the first place so I could make records.
Yeah.
That's how it is with me.
Yeah.
I really love to make records and, concoct that whole thing, and so that's why I write songs.
What do you love about it?
I don't know. I can't give just a one-word answer. Everything. It's just, it's like it's a magical process.
Yeah.
And it does that thing that, a creative act does in your brain, whatever that is.
Yeah. You're not a psychologist.
I don't know, like biological terms all that well. Endorphins, what is it?
Get you in the flow state.
Yeah, or dopamine or something.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. It's a joyful, ecstatic kind of process if it's working. It doesn't last long, like when I finish something, I get sick of it. Usually within about 6 months, maybe.
Really? Sometimes I get
How about you?
I get sick of things sometimes, like after they're not even finished yet, and I'm already sick of it. That's a problem I've been running into. But
that's the answer. Is it's just a great way to occupy oneself, myself, making records, and it's fun when it's a group thing. Then there's that other layer to it with the camaraderie and just that group chemistry thing. It's just it's just a great.
It becomes like a family. When you're writing together with people and making a record together and all that.
Yep, I know. It's good for my spirit. So,
how often?
I said I wasn't going to do it anymore, but
yeah,
I don't know.
But you keep doing it.
Yeah.
What else would you do?
I've never, I just climbed out on this limb and sawed the tree off and pushed it away. So it's like, this is really all I ever decided I was going to do.
Right.
More or less. is play guitar, make rock and roll music.
How'd you find it? It's like your brother was your drummer for a long time, right?
Right, my younger brother. I have 3 younger brothers. I grew up in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
I'm old guy now. I just turned 66. My dad had kind of unconventional taste in music for somebody of his age and so forth, and he really liked. He told me just before he died that he until the age of 12 he lived in a all-black neighborhood. I didn't know that, but that explains where his musical taste came from, possibly. But he just really liked.
You didn't
R&B.
know that until recently?
He saved a lot of stuff to tell me when he was dying.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. He also told me. No, he didn't tell me this. My mother told me after he died that he was present. He was on one of the ships that was present for the Bikini Atoll bomb tests.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds like bikinis and bombs.
Yeah, if you ever see this movie called Atomic Cafe, or have you ever heard of it?
No, but I know the no. I don't think so.
Well, sometime in the
sounds familiar.
Sometime I guess just after World War II ended, like right around then, or as it was ending, or something like that. Not good with dates.
Testing of bombs in the Pacific.
Yeah, and what they did was they cleared away this island called the Bikini Atoll. You know, there are people living on it, indigenous people.
Yeah.
And the Navy shows up and says, well, we're gonna
bomb.
make this great breakthrough for humanity, and that means you got to get out of here, and we're going to take you over there. Right? So that was the starting point of it. And then they basically just blew the island off the face of the earth with these fucking bombs.
Wow.
But they, there's another movie that I just became aware of a little while ago called Radio Bikini, which, you know, if you get a chance to see it, it's on YouTube.
Okay.
But it's a movie about the whole thing. And the Navy, they wanted to make like a media event, like a public relations thing out of it, to get everybody excited about this great thing that we have, the bomb, you know. And so they sent like film crews, set up radio stations. It was nuts.
To kind of promote the bomb.
Yeah, that was what the idea was going to be.
Was
they
too
didn't follow.
Close to it too.
Oh, you're in this too?
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
Everybody was
co-host.
Everybody was close to it because they weren't aware of all the implications back then.
Exactly. And my dad was there.
Yeah, so they're blowing up atomic bombs and people are viewing from like boats close to it. It's crazy.
Yeah, my dad was there and he didn't tell me anything about it. Jesus. A lot of those World War II age guys were like that, right? So, anyway, I got interested in rock and roll music through him.
Okay.
That's what he listened to.
What else did he tell you on right before he was dying?
I forget. Maybe I don't want to say.
That's okay.
Yeah, but
It's interesting though. What did he do?
my dad, let me see, he was the first person in his family to graduate from college after World War II. He went to school on the GI Bill, right? And then he was in city government in the town that we lived in. He had like different jobs. He was city assessor. Then he was assistant city manager. Then he was city manager for a minute. And then when that fell apart, he went to work at a hospital as like a low-level white-collar guy. And then my mother was a high school English teacher.
And this is in Detroit? Did you grow up in
Detroit area.
Detroit area?
Yeah.
That's cool. And so, what kind of music was he into?
Just whatever, you know, like just whatever was on the AM radio, and it was Detroit radio, which is a particular thing, unlike anything else, or it was back then. You know, lots of local stuff and regional stuff.
Specific to the area?
Yeah, there were a lot of local hits and local artists. There was a guy named Jack Scott, who was a big star. He just died a little while ago. Died a few weeks ago. He was the first, fair-skinned person that I was aware of from the area who was a star. Was on TV and on the radio and everything. And he was great, too. You never hear about him anymore. Even he got an obituary in the Toronto Globe and Mail because he was born in Canada. But there was never one in the New York Times. There was one for a guy named Sleepy LaBeef, who was kind of a cult rockabilly guy. But Jack Scott was a big star in the 50s, and there was nothing about him. And there was a thing in the Detroit News and a thing in the Toronto paper. That's all I saw.
Was he a national star, or was he?
Yeah. He was on the Dick Clark Show and the whole thing. Had
You
hit
were
records.
on the Dick Clark Show.
I was. That's true.
That's a funny interview with you on the Dick Clark Show. Actually,
I suppose
you were a punk kid.
Oh, was I? Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably any interview with me from back then is funny.
I don't mean
and this
it in,
one right
I don't
now
mean
is
it
funny.
in a bad way. They're all funny. Well, the interview
Yeah.
process is. What do you think of it?
What do I think of it?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fun. It's like a therapy session, or can be.
Yeah.
But that was one of the things that I didn't know how to do in the beginning. I don't know about you, but there's like, you do have to be careful about it, and
In what
you
way?
have to.
What do you mean?
If I was really thrown in at the deep end in the beginning, because like all the first press that I got was really high profile. I think the first real interview I ever did was for the Melody Maker in England, which is like a big mass circulation thing, and then the next one after that was Rolling Stone, you know, and I just like, I was new at the whole thing, new at the job, didn't have my rhetoric together very well.
Yeah.
But anyway, now sometimes I enjoy it, you know, because you can just talk. But I like it best when I'm on the phone at home with the other person. So this is a different thing.
Yeah, have you done many? You haven't done this many of these kind of things. At least they're not on YouTube.
In person, no.
No.
The only one I can think of is Marc Maron.
Oh, you did that one?
I did Marc Maron,
Oh, yeah. Shit.
That was in 2012, I think.
I wish I would have listened to that one. I did Marc Maron.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's good at it.
He is, yeah. And I like, you know, it's a great show.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear the 2-part thing that he did with Mel Brooks?
Maybe.
Because that's like really maybe the best podcast I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I mean, I liked it, you know.
Yeah. So your dad inspired you at the initials, like he got you into rock and roll music when you were
he
a
was the
kid?
source, you know. The reason I heard the music was because of him, and also because of you know, like we were close knit family, you know. I had 2 aunts in the same town that I grew up in, and they had kids who were slightly older than me in their teens, in their 50s.
Uh-huh.
And God, they're all old people now.
Yeah.
But anywho,
Does that bug you?
It just, yeah, well, it doesn't. I don't know how to
the-
describe the feeling of it.
The
but,
process of life.
Well, my cousin Carol was like a real influential person in my life. She just lost her husband a little while ago, and she's in an assisted living place now.
Yeah.
Just, how about that?
It's a weird one.
Yeah.
The way this whole thing operates, this life on planet Earth. I can't get my head around it still. And I don't think being an artist makes it any easier. Although I wouldn't want to do anything else.
No, I wouldn't either. I like, you know, like the whole wild card thing about it. I actually like it, even though, you know, it can be a real gut punch sometimes. But
Right.
you know, I wouldn't change anything. I just, you know, I don't mind that every year is a blank slate at the beginning.
Right.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Because, you know, then there's room for surprises.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get good surprises. And sometimes you get really fucking good surprises.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I kind of like it. I'm so used to it now.
What's the last good surprise you got?
Oh, just, you know, like, it can be a little thing, you know, just that you're going to have a meeting with somebody about something that's important to you, or, you know, like you're just chipping away at a project and then something happens that's good, you know, just, or you can get a check in the mail and it's like, holy fuck, where did this come from?
Right.
You know, or you can get one for $0.00, which I've gotten a few of those lately.
Really? Streaming ones?
Have you ever seen one of those?
Nah, I never have.
000?
I finally made the grade. Yeah, I just like this last year I got a couple checks. They were residual checks for I sang the theme song to a sitcom.
Which one?
It was a short-lived sitcom called Men Behaving Badly.
Okay.
And this was a residual check for the theme song for Men Behaving Badly for $0.00.
Guess it wasn't a hit.
It's done syndication.
You know, I guess for a while I was getting checks that were like, well, let me see. I forget where it started off at, but, you know, it kind of got to about $70 a pop and then slowly down to $0.
How was the walk? What about the walk hard checks? That must have been pretty good.
For a while, yeah. It was cool for a while.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they really thought that was going to be a #1 at the box office.
It wasn't?
It wasn't.
No.
It's such a classic, though.
Yeah,
dude.
it's a cult hit.
It's like, it's a huge hit.
It's
in
found a
terms-
lot of love.
Oh, yeah.
They sold a lot of DVDs, but I mean, they really they promoted it like it was going to go straight to #1.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised it didn't. In my head, it is #1.
Everybody was surprised.
Yeah. Well, and that's funny because in that film, it's like he gets that cliche, like, you know, Johnny Cash intro into the music business where he shows up at a radio station. The next thing you know, it's like he's a huge hit star, right? That whole sort of, it's just so funny because like that, you know, it couldn't be further from the truth in most people's experience, the music business and all that.
Well, back then, it kind of, stuff like that kind of did happen, though.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, there's this record I really like. This is one that my cousin Carol brought home back in the day. I still hear it on the 50s station once in a while. It's called Susie Darlin' by Robin Luke. And this was a big hit. Got the top 5 all over the world. And it was recorded in an apartment in Honolulu on kind of semi-pro equipment.
Right.
Where they could overdub, but every time they overdubbed, they would kill off the it was a what did they call a positive overdub.
Right.
So the thing was, the apartment was next door to the hospital. So if they were going along and they had a good take, or they had like 5 overdubs and they were almost done, and an ambulance went by, then they had to just start over completely.
Yeah.
So but anyway, they made this record. It's like real primitive sounding, but. And it was put out on a local label in Honolulu and was a big hit in Honolulu. And a guy from a record label called Dot Records was on vacation, heard it on the radio. Dot Records was a big label back in the 50s, and they used to acquire masters from small labels and put them out and have hits with them. So that was kind of that was sort of like a walk hard kind of thing, where they made this crazy record in an apartment, and then a guy on vacation heard it on the radio just by chance, and then the next thing you know, it just blew up. And
blows up.
I love stuff like that.
Yeah. I still want that to happen to me, but I don't know. Like, these are different times, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the Robin, with all due respect, he did kind of go up, and then it was a one-shot thing, but.
Yeah,
it's exciting when it happens.
Your first single was kind of like that a little bit, though. Maybe not a huge, massive hit, but a pretty big hit. Right?
It got up to number 32.
Yeah. So, when did you start writing songs? How old were you when you?
I kind of dabbled in it over the years, but then I got serious about it at age like 26. Late, kind of.
Kind of late.
But again, it was. That I wanted to make records.
Right.
So that's why I wrote songs. It just was, I don't know, I just got to a certain point where I thought, what am I doing? I got to do something.
Right.
But I mean, I always knew what I wanted to do, but what I'm trying to say is that all of a sudden I sort of saw a path. And that's you got to go through that process.
What
right?
helped you see the path? Like, was there a specific artist that you admired then? Was it like the Beatles or anything like that? Ed Sullivan, Beatles on Ed Sullivan, everybody says
it wasn't that. No, when I watched the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, I had drumsticks in my hand and a practice pad and a metal ashtray for a ride cymbal. Like I was already playing. You know? I could play guitar.
Oh, okay.
I'd started the previous summer. So it wasn't the Beatles for me, although I loved them. But I don't know. Yeah, that's a good. No, let me see. Can I answer that question? How did I see a path? I don't know. I just sort of knew, all of a sudden, what the steps.
It was just music.
What the first couple steps were going to be, and then I figured after that it would just take care of itself. I just was confident all of a sudden.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, motivated, confident. It just hit me all at once, which is nice. I mean, I'm just like. I just got to that point, and there it was all in my head.
You just knew you wanted to write songs.
And make records, yeah.
And make records. And your brother...
And the kind of... You know what I mean? Like there was a sound that I had in my head, like a vision. That's what it was. It was a vision.
Yeah, what was the vision?
I had a vision. It just for that sound, which
Rock
was like
and
the
roll.
sum total of my tastes, and also just trying to work around my own limitations.
Yeah.
I just like, I got it.
Yeah. And then you guys hit the road pretty hard, right?
Yeah, we did. First we were playing.
dates a year.
First we were playing here in New York City because there was a really vibrant rock club scene. Right then, there was like an explosion.
So you moved to New York, or did
I was here already.
you were here.
I got to New York through Beatlemania.
Oh, right.
Have you ever heard of Beatlemania?
I heard you were the John Lennon.
I was in Beatlemania. There was a Broadway. It was a hit on Broadway at the Winter Garden.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get any more Broadway than that. And then they opened a West Coast company and a touring company.
Mm.
And I was an understudy in New York for 6 months, and then I got in the West Coast company.
Mm.
And then I got in a touring company. I did it for just under 2 years, and it's like it's a convoluted story as to how I got into it, but I got in it.
What, you sent a tape, right?
Oh, okay, yeah, I guess I did. Yeah, I sent in a tape and a picture, and I got the gig.
What gave you the idea to do that?
I just thought that this might work, that's all. I just saw like a possible opportunity in it because I had pictures of myself where I resembled John Lennon really strongly, and of course I loved John Lennon and was like really just like such a fan. I mean, like, my brain development was influenced by him, my worldview or whatever.
Mm.
I identified with him really strongly, and I don't know. I just thought I'm going to try this, and I got lucky with it. But that opened the door to the rest of my life, kind of.
Interesting. That's like, because that keeps happening with you too, like portraying icons and.
Well, it happened a second time
with Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
I mean, most people it doesn't happen even once.
It is crazy.
It is kind of nuts, right?
Because
then the walk hard thing too is also a shade of that, even though it's different.
A bit, yeah.
But it's similar. Like there's you and the kind of playing of icons in your chosen field.
And it's crazy that it's those two, because Buddy Holly and John Lennon kind of go hand in hand as far as who I loved and who motivated me and inspired me. Buddy Holly when I was a little kid, and then John Lennon during my youth. I mean, I loved so many things and all that, but those two guys in particular. So yeah, it's real oddball that.
Do you ever analyze that type of shit? Like, how did I manifest this, and like think about the power of manifestation in regards to those kind of situations?
Yeah, I can only wonder, honestly.
Yeah, but do you consider it?
Yeah, I do. I'm open. Agnostic is the right word. The whole thing about spiritual forces in the universe.
Well, that's not even necessarily a spiritual force. That could be your own
or
personal
forces in the universe.
Personal, just manifesting. It could just be coming from you. I mean, you could apply God and spirit to it, but it could just be completely agnostic and still have the same belief that you create your reality, I think.
Yep. I don't know. I'm not gonna.
You don't want to riff on that.
No, all I know is that like how we engage with the forces in the universe is there's something I don't know. There's something that's beyond my understanding.
Yeah,
I've just seen too many things like that, that have happened and that just happen from time to time that I can't explain. Like, I'll just give you a couple.
Okay.
I was sitting I had a little period of time where 3 friends of mine died in a short space of time, like less than a year. 3 friends. I think the first one was a woman named Kirsty McCall. Wow. She was a good friend of mine, singer-songwriter, recording artist, really brilliant
pretty famous person, right?
She's famous, yeah. Well, she got killed she was on vacation and got killed. And then a short time after that, a guy named Cub Coda died, and he was a guy from Michigan who co-wrote "Smoking in the Boys' Room," if you know that song.
Of course.
He was Brownsville Station lead singer. Anyway, he died shortly after Kirsty died, and he and I were friends, and we were working on something together right around the time that he died. He was doing the liner notes for this Rhino package of my stuff, a 2 CD set, and Cub wrote the liner notes. And then right after Cub died, a guy named Alan Betrock died, And Alan was the guy who released my first record on his label, Shake Records, and that's another guy who just opened a big fucking door for me.
Mm-hmm.
So Kirsty, Cub, and Alan, and then Cub, like whenever he would talk about his wife, he would always call her Lady J.
Mm.
And I was sitting at the computer one night, and I'm thinking, Lady J, I was going to send her something, or I was going to send her an email, and I wanted to address her by her first name. And I was trying to think, is it Jean or Jane? Jean or Jane? While I'm sitting there thinking about this, a piece of mail fell off the bookshelves behind me.
This is going to freak
And it was
me out.
it was just the truth. It was a Christmas card that I'd just gotten from them.
Mm-hmm.
It was sent before he died.
Wow.
And it said Cub and Jane Coda on the Christmas card.
That's nuts.
That happened.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go figure. And then
Yeah.
there was this other one that really flipped me out. About back in the 70s, I went to the record store one day.
Mm-hmm.
This is just like a little thing, but I was trying to decide whether to buy a Stevie Wonder album called Fulfilling This First Finale or Sly and the Family Stone's Greatest Hits.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to be one of those or the other. And I was like, I couldn't decide. So I went in the record store, and I picked out one, whichever one, I don't remember anymore whichever one I picked out. But I got out in the car, and I would always do this when I bought a record. I was open up the shrink wrap and read the notes and shit. Just sit in the driver's seat and do that. And I opened up whichever one I bought and pulled the album out, and it was the other record. No, the cover was the one, and the record was the other.
That's crazy.
And I just sat there like, I was stunned. But the stupid thing
That's
was,
unbelievable. I mean, I believe you, but it is unbelievable.
Somebody's trying to send you a message. There.
It's like,
I don't have
Buy
proof
both.
though. That's the stupid thing, is that I took it back in to the record store and said, "Oh, there's something wrong."
oh man.
And
Which
I told
one
my
did you
friend,
buy?
I told my friend that story, and he goes, "You should have kept it."
Which one did you actually buy?
He didn't remember.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I have both now, so I don't remember.
Oh.
But anyway, just those are only two things that I can tell where
I'm trying to think how that
okay.
even could happen. I guess they both start with S. Sly, Stevie. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
I only know that it did happen, or at least I think it did.
Yeah. That's like some, what do you call it? Like a fuck up in the Matrix. Glitch in the
glitch.
Matrix. You ever see the Matrix?
No, I got to see that movie.
Yeah, you do.
I've seen a lot of movies, but I haven't seen that one.
Yeah,
That's a good one, man.
I'll see it. I'll watch it.
You'll like it. So you started writing songs. You went on the road. Kind of got famous real quick too.
Yep, it happened real quick.
What was that like?
It was
Fun, right?
yeah, it was remarkable.
Yeah.
It was definitely fun. Yeah, it was great.
And to have your brother on board, that's pretty cool. Or was that cool, or was that rough?
Oh yeah, it was great. We never turned into like the
Liam and Noel.
or Dave and Ray. We never were like that. I mean, maybe behind my back he talks shit about me, but I doubt it. No, we love each other. We're great friends, and I'm close with all my brothers. But it was the dynamic between us was kind of, I mean, no big deal, but yeah, it was a little strange because I was the one who was getting all the attention.
Well, and it's also your name.
That's right, yeah. But no, I mean, I loved it. It was cool while it lasted. That little period.
How long was that?
Well, let me see. We put out our first album and we were on the road for, I don't know, the better part of 2 years, I guess. And then the record stayed on the charts, I forget how many weeks. But then it went off the charts and we were like, okay, I was talked into doing a second album right away.
Mm-hmm.
Like less than a year after my first.
But wasn't that a good thing? I would love that.
I just rolled the dice on it, but it was unconventional.
Why? Because it was so quick?
Yeah, and then the second album was like it was a different kind of sonic approach from the first, and for some reason that really like shocked people. I don't know why.
Because they had you pigeonholed into one thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then you broke the mold.
exactly. And that was always how it was. Every time I made a record, it would be not, a carbon copy or not a repeat in any way of the one before it. But that was, I don't know, people were taken aback by that for some reason.
It's
show business is...
Didn't the critics, though, like it?
Yeah, I just caught a ton of shit on my second album from people because it was loud, it was explosive sounding. And people talked about it like it wasn't my idea. Like I got railroaded into it.
Oh, they thought you
which
were
is ridiculous.
They thought you were selling out.
I don't know what they thought, It just was, I really loved that record. When I finished my first album, I remember sitting, well, I wasn't finished with it, but we thought we were. And I remember sitting in the control room at the record plant listening to a playback of my first album, and I was really stressed anyway. And I just listened to the playback and I thought, I'm fucked. I'm doomed.
Why?
I just thought it sounded
sucked?
bad. I didn't like it. And but we fixed it, like we recut a couple of tracks, we resequenced it, we got it to where, it was okay with everybody, and we put it out, and a lot of people really, really just like took it to their hearts and loved it.
Yeah.
And still, obsess over it. But then, contrast that with less than a year later when I'm sitting in the control room at the power station this time, listening to the playback of my second album, and I'm just got my feet up on the desk. I'm like, I've got the fucking world in my back pocket. I just love that record so much. And then it came out, and everybody was really, a lot of people were really thrown by it. And again, I still don't understand it, why that happened.
But in hindsight, it seems like people rate that record really highly, the second record.
They do.
So
I was right.
You were right. You should have had your feet up. But what was it like? What was it like reading if you got some bad reviews on it? What was that like?
That's the funny thing is I would get like 750 good reviews, and then one bad review, and that would be the one that would just ruin my day.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but it was all new to me then, and I was kind of young and dumb and vulnerable, so little things would mess me up. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's a particular situation when you put out a record and then you open up a review and it just pastes you to the wall. That's a interesting feeling.
We weren't going to talk about this, but I am going to mention this just quickly. Is that I am in kind of a state right now because I came here to talk about a record re-release that's supposed to happen this month.
Yeah.
And I just learned earlier this morning that there was a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
So there might be a long delay before it can come out. So I'm in a kind of a zone right now. But we're doing good. We're talking, right?
In a funk. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Doing fantastic, Marshall.
Yeah.
Loving it.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
It's all good. It's all good. We're just talking about, the trials and tribulations. I can relate to you because I've been doing this a long time and I've had some success, but it's never just been like this, okay, now you're made.
Yeah.
You're still fighting for everything all the time.
Yeah.
Don't you find that?
It's hard to get on a roll.
Yeah, it is.
That's the thing, some people can get on one.
Yeah.
And those lucky few. And then with me, I've just had sporadic success here and there, and then in between sometimes there's lulls, sometimes there's real lulls. But I will say this, now that I'm at the point that I'm at, I'm like, okay, it worked out.
Yeah. Your
and
life is
I hope that
out.
You'll feel that way sometime.
Yeah.
Later on or at some point where you're just like, okay, it was what it was, Show business is very...
Yeah.
You're lucky if you get anything out of it.
That's true.
That's what I keep saying. So...
yeah, the magic of getting to create something and, spread that, I guess.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I've gotten about 75% out of like everything I really wanted in life.
Mm-hmm.
I got most of it at this point. And now the other thing I'm hoping I get is longevity, personally.
Right. You mean
I just hope I can live.
health-wise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, your body is like a time bomb, right?
It is.
I just heard about a guy in my town, the tax assessor. He's got brain cancer.
Right.
Younger guy, a little bit younger than me.
Yeah.
I'm not always like this.
No. Me neither. What do you mean you're not always
It's just
like
one of those days, I'm feeling kind of morose,
Yeah.
But I'm not like this all the time.
That's okay. I like talking about morose shit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's fine. But do you pray or have any kind of prayer life? You said agnostic before, but like when you factor in and think about like untimely death or death in general, I mean, what gives you comfort?
I don't know. I can't. I'm non-religious, definitely.
So you don't pray. You don't ask.
Oh,
for
well,
help
I
or
do
anything?
kind of actually. I don't pray like prayers, but I mean sometimes I wish for things. I guess that's like a prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Do
you have a vision of a creator or God or anything like that?
I just don't think it's above my pay grade, to try to do that. And also, I mean, I really have mixed feelings about the whole thing. I was raised Catholic, went to catechism class.
Right.
But my dad converted to Catholicism. He was raised in it was like a Southern Baptist kind of church.
Okay.
It was all white people, though, but, they would, like, act out, and it was, like, real high-spirited, and, the preacher was real fire and brimstone kind of thing. I would get, taken to my Grandma Crenshaw's church once in a while, when I was used to the Catholic church where everybody whispered. And then I'd go to this one with my dad's relatives, and it would just be like, this big show, and it was like shocking to me. Mm-hmm. But anyway, he grew up in that.
Maybe that's where you got rock and roll from.
Yeah, who knows? It's certainly. I mean, rock and roll certainly has gospel roots, right, and jazz roots.
Absolutely.
All that. But anyway, my dad grew up in that church, and then he converted to Catholicism when he married my mother, because that was what you did back then. So we were kind of ambivalent Catholics anyway. Uh-huh. My mother too, but she just like sent me there to make her parents happy, I think, or something. But I didn't like it, I mean, I got to not like it at all. By the time I was about 10 years old, I didn't like it anymore. And then I remember one Sunday, we didn't go to church.
And you never went back.
I'm like, what happened? I didn't want to say anything.
Right, because you didn't want to
jinx it. Because I was afraid, well, let's go. Yeah. So I didn't say anything, and then the next Sunday rolled around.
No church.
They
skipped it.
I was like, fuck. And then after about 5 weeks, I asked my mother, and she goes, no, we're not going to go anymore.
Why? Did she give you an answer?
They were, I don't remember exactly, but it was some Vatican ruling that they didn't like.
I see.
Something or other where they just suddenly felt estranged from it.
Make it stand.
And I was like, oh, good news. We're not going to go anymore.
Yeah. Well, I guess
that's how I felt about it.
I ask about all that stuff because it's like when I think of, brain tumors and impending doom and all that, I need, like, I consider it like almost a weakness, but I need to like think there's something, like, hey, please help. Uh-huh. Like I ask for help sometimes and, like frequently. And I just don't, I guess, understand how people are riding through this without that security blanket, whether it's fact or fiction. You know what I mean? I'm not,
Yeah.
So that just seems curious to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do really love life, honestly. So I'm happy enough with that, for right now. I'm like, okay, let's deal with this right now.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But as far as, I mean, I do have a tendency to think that, I don't know, but it seems to me like there's some kind of spiritual energy that lives on after you're gone or after people are gone.
I think so.
It kind of, it's, I don't know, it almost
Somebody
seems
put
like it
Stevie-
stands to reason.
Somebody put Stevie
To me.
Wonder's album in that Sly and the Family Stone, dude. I'm just kidding.
Right, and we still think and talk about, I don't know, I can't help, I wonder, is all I can do is wonder. But
Right.
I do, it's one of the things I am preoccupied with sometimes, just, well, what does it all mean, All this shit that happens and that thing that happened, what does that mean,
Right.
But I don't know what it means.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what anything means either, but I definitely think things have a meaning. I don't feel like this is meaningless, but it could be. I don't know. Like,
No, I don't think it is either.
I don't feel.
But it's
like
not meaningless to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think making music is a way of celebrating it and bringing that, and kind of revealing the spirit behind things too.
Uh-huh.
Do you think of it like that ever? Like a spiritual practice or?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Some music is really, is an expression of spirituality. A lot of it.
Could say all of it, maybe.
Well, not all of it, because there's hack work,
Yeah.
and that's just an expression of hack work. But when it's good, it's
Some spirits are hacky. Maybe, just because it's in the spirit world doesn't mean it's not full of hacks too. There's hacks in the spirit world.
you could be right about that.
Yeah, I think I am.
We are hacks in the material. No,
Yeah.
that's
Spirits in the material world.
yeah. I got that confused for
Yeah.
a second.
So, you've been putting out a bunch of EPs, right? Or was that was a few years ago?
Yeah, that was during 2013
Yeah,
through 2016.
yeah. You didn't want to put out albums anymore.
That's right.
Why? Why is that?
Well, for one thing, that's like how I like to listen to stuff anyway. I grew up
Few songs at a time.
with singles,
Right.
and to me, like the highest manifestation of a rock and roll record is a hit single or a good single.
Mm-hmm.
And just that's how I am, and like even when I did buy lots of albums, it seems like when I was doing, I would do a lot of intensive listening, but I would just listen to individual tracks on albums.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a period of time when I was playing in a bar band. This is in the 70s. Still living at my parents' house, although I was gone a lot. But, I'd come home from my bar band gigs and I'd just want to listen to music. And so I'd grab a bunch of albums and a bunch of singles and just kind of skip around. I was never like an album guy.
No.
We have a mutual friend, Ehud and I, Rich Pagano. You know Rich?
I know Rich. Yeah, I played some of his events before.
Rich is really great, and I went to see this.
Great drummer.
Yes, he is, and I went to see this act that he has, this show that he does called Early Elton,
Mm-hmm.
where they do all these album tracks from early Elton John albums.
Mm-hmm.
With John Conte and Jeff Casey.
That's right. And I was watching them, and they're just like they're so deep into this music, they just know every little note of it. And I'm trying to think, okay, what was I obsessing over when they were obsessing over Elton John albums? What was it? What was it that I was into that way? And I realized it was top 40 radio, and it was stuff. It was like Gamble and Huff, and just or Till You Come Back to Me by Aretha Franklin. I had the 45 of that. I would just play it over and over and over again, day after day after day. So it was never albums with me. It was, I bought albums, and every now and then there'd be one that I would dive into as an album, but mostly it was singles and just individual tracks. So anyway, you asked about the EP project, and it just made sense to me to do a short form thing like that, because that's how I listen to music anyway. I just focus on individual tracks and singles. So, and then I liked the idea of doing vinyl records. All of a sudden, they were popular again. People wanted to have them and buy them, and I'm like, oh, I love this, because I never stopped liking vinyl records, albums. Now they call them vinyl records, but so I decided to do a project like that where it was. I mean, it worked great. You know, it was like there was always. I put out the first one, and then the next one was supposed to come out 6 months later. So that when the first one comes out, right away I got to start working on the next one, and that went on. You know, for like 6 cycles. It took 3 years, and so it was really great because I always felt like
You were always busy.
I always felt like I was in the middle of creating something new, and that there was always something new that had just come out. So, you know.
Why'd you ever stop?
Well, I don't know. It was just kind of designed as a thing to last for a proscribed amount of time, you know.
But it's interesting because I find that like that when you're in that state you're describing there, like where you're constantly in the process of working. Mm-hmm. That's like the greatest thing I feel like for people like us or songwriters, singers, you know, because it's difficult to get all those elements together, like get somebody to put out a record or to be in the studio, to be in that process is not that easy to get into. You know, there's all kinds of hoops you got to jump through.
That's right. Yeah.
So when you set it up to where you're going to be in that state for the next 3 years, that's pretty amazing.
It was really good. It's like I said before, you know, like what I like to do is make records.
Yeah.
When you do an album, you know, like you write for a couple of years, what my friend David calls research and development, and then you go in the studio. And how long are you in the studio for? Like 4, 5, 6 weeks. You know, that's how long I would take when I made my albums. And then the record comes out, like all that work, it just kind of gets dumped out all at once, and then you start over again. So
yeah. Well, then you go tour and I'll do all that stuff, and that's a couple of years, and then you go back in the studio, and then it's like you got to reinvent it all again. Yeah,
I mean, I guess if I decided to become a record producer or some other thing like that instead of what I did decide to do, you know, then that would be my job, to be in the studio all the time. Maybe that's what I should have done, but I don't really have the temperament to be a producer, I found out from trying and failing at it. I can produce my own stuff. Yeah. I can only do my own stuff at this point. It took me a long time to learn that, but
I found I could do other people's stuff.
Good.
I didn't know I could, you know, I didn't know if I would care about somebody else's thing as much as my own. Yeah. But it turned out I did. My ego could easily go into their world and be like, make that the most important thing.
Boy, well, that's nice.
Yeah, it was.
Good for you.
I was surprised that happened, but it did. Yeah,
that's good.
So when's the what are you working on now? Are you working on new songs?
Yes. Again, I hit this glitch today where the whole thing is kind of like.
That's repackaging stuff, though.
Yeah, but. Right, it's 5 albums that are going to be re-released, but not all at once.
Is it the Razor and Tie stuff?
Yeah, my Razor and Tie albums are no longer Razor and Tie albums.
And those are your favorite albums of yours, right? I heard you say that.
More or less, kind of, yeah. I mean, I'm very fond of them, yeah. Especially this first one that's supposed to come out, and then the one after it. Those are 2 of my best.
Which ones are
albums?
Those?
There's one called Miracle of Science. That's a good record. And then the one after that is called Number 447, and that's a really good one too. So those are 2 where I was
What's
just
with
like
the
really
number
on
thing?
it. I couldn't think of an album title.
So you just random number, or did the number?
Yeah,
have
it's a random number. I thought, well, it's a little bit of a joke too, you know, because I thought of groups like Toto or Chicago, you know, groups that just would number their albums, which I always thought was kind of lazy-minded. Right. Not, you know, with all due respect to them, those guys. But anyhow, I couldn't think of an album title. So I thought, well, okay, how about a number? And it was supposed to be a joke, like, which album of this is mine? Oh, it's number 447. Right. That's it. I was going to call it, this is true, I was going to call it number 448, but the guy, Cliff, or was it Craig Balsam at Razor and Tie, he goes, well, why don't you call it number 447? You know, I said, well, why? What difference does it make? And he goes, well, 447 is a primary number.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what's that? And he says, it can't be divided by any other number. I said, oh, okay. But he was wrong about that.
Oh, okay.
It can be divided by 13.
Weird. I mean, do you ever analyze numbers?
I'm not that smart.
What do you got? You don't got to be smart to analyze numbers. Like
I don't know.
You see, like if you see like
numbers?
333 all the time, or get the idea that the universe is trying to communicate to you through numbers, or any of that kind of thing. Seeing recurring numbers.
No. How about you?
Yeah.
Okay. Like
all the time.
Give me an example.
Well, lately I've been seeing 69 all over the place. And then I'll look it up on Google and be like, obviously aside from the obvious jokes that could come from 69, but it means like transformation. It's not necessarily a good thing,
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
just like stuff like that, analyzing numbers.
No, not yet.
No.
But
Well, you probably
maybe
won't.
I'll start.
Nah. Seems like if it would have happened already. But so
anyway, I'm sorry. Let me just finish that answer. Yes, I'm working on that, the reissues, and then with each one there's supposed to be a new single. Like I committed to I made a commitment to make new tracks to go with each album that comes out.
That's just the pipes.
The ghosts and the pipes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just ignore it?
Yeah, we just ignore
it'll
it.
go
Okay.
away.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so this is kind of similar in that you're setting up like a way to be actively creative on a more regular basis.
And that's how I do it now is I tell somebody that I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, okay, where is it? You said you were going to do it. So
Yeah.
I make myself do it that way by making a commitment to do it.
And
I don't just sit around and write a song, and that's, I mean, unfortunately, I have to pressure myself into doing it.
Yeah. That makes sense, though.
Are you a procrastinator?
No, nuh-uh. When I have a deadline,
I mean, if there's no
Then I get into
deadline, then you don't push yourself.
No, because what I do if there's no deadline is I overthink and then I procrastinate.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's a deadline, then I don't put it off. I get it done, and I make sure that I like it too. So it's a good thing for me a good way for me to trick myself into doing something to the best of my ability.
Do you record at home?
I do a lot of that. Yeah.
What do you record on?
I just have a bunch of junk. I have like Pro Tools version 7.
Oh, good.
I have
The updated one then.
Yep, I have a computer that I bought in
86.
2008. Yeah.
Right.
But I do have good microphones and some good outboard gear. I can do all right with it.
You make complete records at home?
I can, yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite is like my album Miracle of Science is a hybrid, about half of it I did by myself. There are a couple tracks that I did by myself, but there's also some really great kind of group stuff going on. I went down to Nashville and worked with some friends of mine down there, a guy named Brad Jones, who's a
pretty
really
famous
brilliant
producer.
Good producer, great producer. He works with a lot of different people. And then a guy named Bill Lloyd from Foster and Lloyd, and just this whole little crew of musicians that was down there at that time. And it was a gas, playing. So that album is a hybrid of my solitary genius thing and the group activity,
group dynamic.
Yeah.
What year did you make that one?
1995.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 96, 95, in there somewhere.
I had two questions, if I may.
Okay.
One is he mentioned the Dick Clark show. And I watched that interview last night, and it is pretty funny, but not because of you. What I found funny, and I wanted to ask, was Dick Clark made a comment, like a snide comment.
Yeah, he was
why didn't you use an American producer? Why did you have to go with a British guy? And the British guy that you used was Steve Lillywhite.
Right,
I mean, so how did you get him to produce your first album back then? Was he already big back then?
That was my second album, the one that Steve Lillywhite did. And yes and no, because he was he had a lot of success in England, but like the people at Warner Brothers in Burbank had never heard of him, And I remember when we were in the studio doing the record, there was a review. I used to buy this paper every week called the New Musical Express, NME. I'd read it cover to cover. That went on for like 6 or 7 years.
That used to be the internet.
Now it's on the internet. Yeah.
No, I said that used to be the internet. That was like.
Oh yeah.
That was the internet.
That's right.
Yep.
And anyway, I remember when we were in the studio working on Field Day with Steve, there was a review of the new U2 album that was about to come out.
Mm-hmm.
War. That was the third album, I think, and that was kind of the one that got his name going, over here. But I liked, there was Generals and Majors by XTC, and there was one called Hong Kong Garden by Susie and the Banshees, and I Will Follow by U2. These are old records now, but at the time they were really pretty striking. And so we just asked him to do it, and sent him some stuff. He liked our stuff. We met him and immediately liked him. He's a great guy, and we all just hit it off. That's all. It was that simple.
What'd you learn?
What'd
you learn from working with him? Did you learn anything?
What did I learn? Well, I paid attention to what he was doing.
What did he do?
He just had a lot of really he just had a spirit of adventure. He knew a lot of stuff. He'd been trained as an engineer, and before that as a tape op, and went through that whole kind of British recording studio training thing. But, he just... There was one thing he did. We were at the power station, which is still kind of up and running, I think, which is nice. But in this big room with the walls, all kind of unfinished wood, beautiful sounding room, and he wanted to do everything in layers.
Overdubs?
Everything.
Really? That's
even
so
the drums separate from the cymbals.
Yeah, I've heard people do that shit.
Yeah. I mean, now, after that, he kind of moved away from that whole thing and got into doing like live ensemble stuff. But at this time, his rule was just like, let's make sure we got this right, and then we'll go on to this, and so we did it that way. And when he was doing the drums, he had this microphone up in the ceiling of the place, and it was gated. Like the sound from that microphone was like smashed with a compressor and then gated.
Yeah.
So whenever my brother would hit a drum, it would open up. It was every drum.
Yeah.
Explosive.
So then he blends that in, right?
Yeah, you got to sneak it in. Maybe you snuck it in a little too much, or maybe I told him to sneak it in a little too much. But just a lot of things. The other thing that was cool about the power station for me is that they had tube equipment by the ton. And that was rare at that time, like coming out of the 70s, people used to take their tube equipment during the 70s and Fairchild compressor and like set it out for the trash man.
That's crazy.
To bring the new solid state stuff in, And then it was starting to switch. Yeah. And it was starting to switch back in the early 80s, but Power Station was ahead of the curve because they had, in every one of their control rooms, they had these racks full of Pultec EQs.
Right. So
everything on that album went through these tube equalizers. Yeah. That's another reason why I love Field Day, is it just has that sound, that I was missing on my first album, because there was no tube equipment in the record plant at that time. They just laughed at it. And anyway, I did learn a lot. It's hard for me to exactly say that I learned this and this, but I just really liked his approach, and I liked his taste.
Yeah.
And he was really a fun guy,
Still in touch with him?
Not so much, no. But I did, I sought him out about 5 years ago. Because whenever I'd read an interview with him, somebody would ask him about my album.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve would say, I guess I just sort of like steered him in the wrong direction or something like that. And I just thought, you didn't steer me in any wrong direction, you know. There was never anything that happened on that record that I wasn't, you know, it was all good to me. Otherwise, it would have gotten changed. I was the one, actually, it was my fault that, you know, people, like the vocals maybe down a little. I say this now, like maybe the vocal is down a little bit from where it should be. But that was me. I'm just kind of telling him, you know, pull it into the track a little more, because I didn't like the sound of my voice, right?
Right.
That whole stupidity. But anyway, I sought him out because I said, we got to talk about this, you know, like you're saying this whole thing over and over again. I think that he got brainwashed by the reviews.
Right.
Myself. I hope that, you know, he doesn't hear this or see this and think I'm saying something I shouldn't say, but
It doesn't sound like you're bashing him or anything.
I'm not.
It's just like you're talking about how we control the narrative in a way, or like we keep repeating similar stories, and that's what defines reality. And you're just like, hey, let's change that reality into like, this was a great album.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck it. Doesn't, you know.
That's the reality.
Just because it got misunderstood by a certain number of people at the time.
So
There's no
I
big
sought
deal.
him out. We had lunch. It was great. You know, we had a nice time.
Where'd you go?
Well, this is interesting. He was in New York at that time.
Uh-huh.
But the last thing I heard about him was that he had moved to Jakarta, Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
One of the last places on earth where people still buy CDs,
Wow.
or did then. And he got like deep into this whole record making thing in Indonesia, you know, like kind of took over a little bit, you know.
He took over the Indonesian
Well, he had a
record.
label deal, believe it or not. I read this in the New York Times. It's not like a secret or anything, but he had a
Right.
label deal with Kentucky Fried Chicken in Indonesia because they were selling CDs at the KFC stores, and he was producing the records
Follow the money.
by like local rock. Anyway, yeah, he followed the money over to Indonesia, but he said that it was great and he really loved it, and that the music was interesting, which I'm sure it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't heard any of those records. I should maybe. I don't know why. I should check some out. Maybe they're cool, you know.
That's just so weird. Steve Lillywhite, Kentucky Fried Chicken in Indonesia.
Isn't it?
That's very
But
odd.
he was.
Google search right
Yeah,
there.
there's your Google search homework right there.
But I mean, you know, he was really hardcore about the whole thing. You know how albums were being devalued. It's just like it really offended him. I read in the same interview, or an interview I read, he was going off about like, what's not to like about this? You know, you put it on, it'll make you happy. If you're sad, I mean, you know, this is just a real believer, like a hardcore believer in the form, and he just was gonna, wherever that form is accepted, I'm gonna go there. Wherever in the world, I can do my thing. I'm gonna, and it's like it's a real commitment, you know, like.
That is wild.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that existed. But that's pretty funny.
I really like him, and I loved working with him.
When you talked to him and you guys had lunch or whatever, and did he go, yeah, okay, let me change the narrative the way I speak on that then? Or did it take, or what was that like?
Maybe. I think, yeah, a little bit, sort of. Yeah. He dialed it in a different direction a little bit.
Yeah.
You know. But I love, you know, every time anybody interviews him, it comes up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. See, that's a record that's still treasured by people that love it, you know?
Yeah. That's cool that you've gotten to do things that people treasure.
It's nice, isn't it? I mean,
It is nice, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you practice gratitude or anything like that, or do you strive towards that? How do you keep your spirit up?
Do I strive towards it? No, I just feel it, you know. I do have a sense of gratitude.
Yeah.
About the way things have turned out, definitely. And humility is a big thing too, you know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, people that don't have humility, they're bad people, you know.
I don't even know anybody like that, I don't think. Well, no, I probably do.
Well, we see people like that in public life who don't have any.
I mean, life is just so humiliating. So I don't, I don't know how anybody skirts it.
Yeah.
But
anyway, yeah, gratitude, humility, yeah, those are things I believe in, definitely.
do you have a kind of any practices that help keep your life together, like exercise routines or meditation or anything like that?
How about you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like
Tell me about it.
I go to yoga every day and I box.
You box?
Yeah.
I don't have the balls.
You don't need balls to box.
Well, I don't
you
wanna
need
get hit in
balls.
the face.
You need balls to spar,
Okay.
but you don't need balls to learn how to box.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a wonderful practice. It's the sweet science.
That's what they call it, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot like
science.
learning how to play guitar.
Yeah,
It's a technique, but you engage your mind. The mind arose to facilitate movement. That's what a biologist told me. And
Where do you go to spar?
I go to Trinity
Okay.
downtown, down in Tribeca.
Is Gleason's gym still? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was taken there one time
Is that
by
Dumbo?
somebody. We watched Jerry Cooney.
Oh,
Remember
okay.
him?
Yeah.
He was in the ring sparring.
Mm-hmm.
Just one day I went there.
But do you do anything along those lines? Exercise, meditation?
I go to the health club, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've done that ever since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
I've dropped the ball on it for periods here and there, but mostly I've stuck with it. Yeah, so I exercise. I walk the dog.
Keep it basic.
I walked here from Penn Station.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah, whenever I'm in New York City, I
Where do you
walk.
live?
I live in a town called Rhinebeck.
Rhinebeck?
Rhinebeck,
is
yeah,
that
Dutchess County.
Is that upstate?
It's upstate. I live upstate.
What do you think of it there?
What do I what?
You like it up there?
I do, yeah. I love it. I didn't intend to live there and stay, but now I've lived there most of my life.
Really?
Yeah.
How'd you wind up there?
Well, we were living in the East Village, and just stuff was converging in a certain way that made me decide that we should get the F out. But it was never intended to stay away permanently.
Uh-huh.
But we found, like a friend of a manager that I had then knew somebody who was renting a house in Woodstock, and we went up and looked at the house, and it was great. It was on 18 acres, and the rent was half as much as my duplex in the East Village.
Yeah.
For this house on 18 acres, and so we moved in.
You and your wife?
My
You're
wife.
Married?
I've been married since before I was born.
Really?
Almost, yeah.
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 So over 60 years married?
Might as well be.
Might as well be.
So we moved. Yeah, we means me and her name is Ione.
Ione?
I-O-N-E, yeah. So
Right.
we moved up to Woodstock, and now we're in Rhinebeck, which is not Woodstock, but it's like, here's Woodstock, here's the Rhine Cliff Bridge over the Hudson River, and here's Rhinebeck. So we're in the same
Lateral
region.
move.
That's right. We made a lateral move to Rhinebeck.
Did you ever play with Garth Hudson?
Did I ever play with him?
Up there?
I played with Levon.
Yeah.
I played on one of the Rambles.
Uh-huh.
2009, I was on a Ramble. So I played with him then. And another time, too, a recording session for this friend of mine named Christine Ullman.
Mm.
She had Levon and me and Andy York and some other, Andy York, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't think I ever played with Garth, but I've met him and been in his midst.
In his presence, yeah.
I was on a couple shows with Rick Danko up in Woodstock, so I had some contact with that whole crowd of people.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because Garth was on one of my records I made up in Catskill at this studio called Old Soul, Kenny's studio up there.
Wow.
You ever seen that studio?
No.
But so you must have been like, what year was that you moved up there?
We moved up at the beginning of 1987.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
What was the scene like up there? Was it like thriving artists and freaks and all that, or
No, I mean yes, but no. I mean there had been like a live music scene
yeah,
earlier in the 70s, but it wasn't kind of happening anymore. when I moved up there. There was one club, and I don't even remember the name of it anymore.
Right.
But they were having disco night one night a week. Like disco finally made it up there. It's strange that I don't remember the name of the club. But I went there once or twice, and when I would go in the bathroom, they would have posters on the wall from previous gigs, and there was Charles Mingus had played there, and all these singer-songwriters, Tim Hardin and everything like that.
Mm-hmm. Steve Forbert.
Well, no, that's my peer group, Steve Forbert.
Yeah. I would always see him at the singer-songwriters' rooms. What was it like moving up there from being in the East Village? Was that a transition?
It was. It was
crazy?
Really jarring, yeah.
Did you freak out, or were you all right with it? Obviously, I guess you were all right with it.
All right with it, yeah. But I mean, it was a beautiful place to go to, like when the house we lived in and the whole spread, it was really.
But that's such a crazy
really nice
shift that a lot of people do. They're used to being in the East Village or in the midst of Manhattan, and suddenly they're like in this rural. It happens a lot.
It was tougher for Ione than it was for me because she was there all the time.
Uh-huh.
Like I would go on the road still, or I'd go down to the city.
Yeah.
For this, that, and the other thing, but she was just there, it was just like that fucking show Green Acres. Goodbye, city life. You know that one?
No,
you don't.
I don't know that. So how about your book? The book about movies and rock and roll and movies.
That was just a kind of an oddball side project that I did, but I wasn't doing anything else that year.
Yeah.
And that was something I learned from. It was fun. My name was on the cover, but I wrote maybe like
what,
5 to 7% of it. You know what I mean?
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a book of film reviews. That's all it was. And but like rock and roll movies. But we're trying to strike a certain attitude with it. Like there was a book that came out around that time called the Psychotronic Film Anthology, about like underground films mostly and indie films. And with Hollywood Rock, we wanted to put the spotlight on that stuff too, because the underground stuff is always just as important as the popular stuff.
Yeah.
Anyhow, there were maybe like 350 film reviews in this book, just little short 1-2 paragraph things, and I wrote maybe a dozen of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I was kind of like I was really overseeing the whole thing and working with a guy named David Rubel. He's a book packager. The whole thing was his idea. But it was fun. I did that. You just reminded me to talk about my other side project that I'm doing right now.
Let's talk about it.
I might as well. I'm working on a documentary film, and that's a real odd left turn, but I got the idea to do it one day back in 2013,
mm-hmm.
and I decided that I was going to do it, and that was it. Like I told myself I was going to do it. So,
a documentary about you?
Nope. It's about a record producer who's a tiny, teeny little bit famous, but should be much more famous, and his name was Tom Wilson.
Okay. Yeah, he produced Bob Dylan, right?
Produced Bob Dylan. There's like 6 or 7 bullet points in his legacy, and with each one of them you could point to it and say, wow, this guy changed popular music.
Mm-hmm.
But with him, there are like a half dozen of them.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all like, really? Like, how come I never heard of this guy who did that? Oh, how come I never heard of this guy who did that? But he did all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So he's very important.
What else? Bob Dylan, and then what else?
Well, first thing he did in the music business was he attempted to launch he attempted to establish a record label. He launched it. It lasted about a year and a half. It was a label called Transition Records, mainly a jazz label. And he put out the first album by Cecil Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
And then he put out the first album by Sun Ra and the Orchestra.
That's
that
crazy.
Wasn't a self-release. So Wilson discovered Cecil Taylor and Sun Ra.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's underground to a lot of people, but those two are those are monumental artists right there. So he discovered them, quote unquote, then drifted a little bit, continued in jazz, and worked with everybody, produced some jazz records that either are classics or should be, there are a couple that are like underground classics. But then he got hooked up, he got a job at Columbia Records, and they assigned him to work with Bob Dylan on Dylan's second album. Dylan wasn't...
Another side of Bob Dylan, was that?
It's called The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan.
Oh, The Freewheelin',
such an amazing album.
Yeah, that was Dylan's second album.
Yeah.
So Wilson came in on the last session for that album. The whole thing took about a year to record, just a session here, another one 4 or 5 months later. You know what I mean? They were spread out over a year. Dylan was struggling to finish the album. And he wasn't, his first album sold, 10,000 copies.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't have any clout at the label. They would let him in the studio whenever they wanted to, or whenever he could get to the studio. And then sessions back then were 3 hours, and then you had to get out and make way for somebody else. And anyway, enough of that. But anyway, Wilson came in as Dylan's producer at the end of that album, and then he continued with him through to Like a Rolling Stone.
Right.
So you understand there's a transition from folk troubadour to to rock star, right?
Yeah.
Not only that, but
yeah, because Tom Wilson did Blonde on Blonde on Highway 61.
no, he was out
he?
by
No.
then.
Oh, he was out by then.
Yeah, he was.
Bringing
but he
it
did
all back.
Bringing It All Back Home.
Okay.
Another side of Bob Dylan.
All right.
Times They Are a Changin' and Free. I mean, I just said it in reverse order. What I should say is he took him from Masters of War to Like a Rolling Stone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big, that there have been a lot of times over the years when Bob Dylan has shook up popular music,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that span of stuff just really turned the world upside down.
Yeah.
When he was with Tom Wilson, and so that was this other thing that Wilson also discovered Simon and Garfunkel. You might say he kind of caused them to become Simon and Garfunkel. They'd worked together as kids. Simon and Garfunkel. They did some records, called themselves Tom and Jerry.
Oh yeah.
When they were in high school. But then the Simon and Garfunkel thing happened because of Tom Wilson. He's the one that opened the door for them to get on to make records, and they did an acoustic album, folk album that had Sounds of Silence on it. And then the album stiffed. They went their separate ways. But then a few months later, Wilson took Sounds of Silence into the studio and overdubbed rock instrumentation onto it. And that's
Right.
the version that we know.
That's interesting.
Well, what's crazy is he did that overdub. If I'm not mistaken, he did that overdub session one morning in June of 1965, and then that afternoon he produced Like a Rolling Stone.
Is that right?
So that's a pretty good day for a record producer.
That's not bad.
And he also had one foot out the door at Columbia Records at that time. So that was one of the very last sessions that he did for the label. So on his way out the door, it's 2 #1 records, but not just #1 records. These are records that just changed popular music, those
Right.
two. So he's just on his way out the door. He's oh, here you go, have these as I'm leaving you, So then he went over to.
And just real quick on that Sounds of Silence overdub thing, you can hear that those drums are put on later.
Oh yeah.
You can hear it. It's something that I actually like about that record too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oddly, that helps it. I don't know why.
Yeah, it kind of jerks around a little bit.
Yeah, but it's appealing.
Yeah, and I listened to the 4-track tape. Not only that, but I listened to all the takes of Sounds of Silence from the folk album.
Mm-hmm.
There's I guess 10 takes.
Are those available?
No, I got let into the.
Oh wow.
I've done a lot of research that if I told you about it, it would blow your mind, and that was one of the things that blew my mind. To hear that tape, but.
We're here for our minds to be blown. You can tell us.
Well, some of it I don't think I'm supposed to talk about it yet, but Anyway, I did. I will talk about this. I listened to all the different takes of Sounds of Silence from the folk album, and in between, there's no piano on it. There's just bass and maybe 2 guitars, mainly Paul Simon's guitar. But in between takes, he's retuning his guitar, and not to a piano or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So by the time he gets to take number 10, the guitar is not exactly where it was on take number 1, mm-hmm. but the master is a composite master. It's like 3 different takes cut together.
Yeah.
So when the electric guitar players came in to try to overdub onto this track, they couldn't get in tune with it. So you listen to just the electric guitars by themselves on the 4-track tape, and it just sounds like a buzzing beehive of out of tuneness. But when you put it all together and throw a ton of chamber echo on it, it sounds beautiful, to me anyway.
Yeah.
Or to everybody. Everybody loves that record.
I think that the imperfections are what make things like that interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, he did that. Then he went over to MGM Verve, and the first 2 signings over there were the Velvet Underground and Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention.
That's crazy.
And we've confirmed now that without Tom Wilson, both of those acts were dead in the water. Like, nobody was going to touch the Velvet Underground. Nobody was going to touch Zappa. In fact, Zappa, he was the only one out of all the A-list rock stars that worked with Wilson who already was a fan of Tom Wilson, because Cecil Taylor was one of Zappa's heroes. But anyway, in early interviews, Zappa said, that he was glad that they got turned down by everybody, because that way they wound up with Tom Wilson, who's the only person on earth who was going to get them,
Right.
So that was the other thing. The Velvet Underground, again, they were dead without Wilson, and then Zappa, and then what's the other one? There's other ones besides that.
That's enough right there.
Yeah, totally. So he was a giant, in other words.
Yeah.
But like, who knows? Everybody can name like 5 or 6 record producers.
Nobody talks about him.
No, and he's like very important,
I guess he needed a better publicist.
Well, in his time, he had some media visibility.
Yeah.
And there was a cover story about him in the New York Times Magazine, and he was I found a lot of press, and he also did a syndicated radio show for a while, but something happened with him. He just kind of dropped off the face of the earth. And his story is really a vital story.
How far along are you in the documentary?
Far along. This is the year when the movie is going to get made.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So I'm doing that, and that's really kind of like a engrossing, you know what I mean?
Yes, sounds like it.
I've been really hung up on that ever
sounds
since
like
I
a
started
good idea too.
I think it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, it is. What are you going to call that?
I don't know. I'm not going to direct it. I've already got like a team now that I'm just a part of it.
You could call it Wilson Picks It.
That is fantastic.
That's so stupid.
No, I have a meeting today.
That's dumb.
That's not going to be it. But I love that joke. It's a really good joke. And how I never thought of that until now, I don't know. But that's good.
Are there interviews
Wilson
on
picks it, baby.
Wilson picks it. Yeah, is there a good question? Is there interviews with him?
Are Paul and Art on it?
Yeah. Oh, well, not yet, but interviews with him. Yeah, I found a lot. I found some film of him.
Yeah,
and a lot of audio recordings. There's a really great interview with him where he just kind of explains things that happened from his point of view. When I found that interview, I was like, oh, that's one of those
Holy
things.
Grail.
Yeah,
Yeah, it would be. I love those Bob Dylan records too. I would be curious to hear Bob talk about what it was like working with Tom Wilson, or how much influence he had over the process.
They've been just absolutely amazing about it.
Oh, really?
Really, yeah.
Bob has?
Well, You know, yeah, I guess. I mean, it's him indirectly, but you know, they've just been really nice, and I think they want it to happen. You know, like they really want it to happen. I think.
That's great.
I'll tell you more after the camera's not rolling.
Okay. Well,
I've loved doing this. It's like I feel very confident about it now. I know, of course, anytime it could just flip upside down and ruin my life, but
what?
Because just that's the way things go, you know.
What could ruin your life?
The movie project.
Oh, the movie project.
But I've really loved it up till now. It's been gas, you know. I think it's going to happen this year.
Who are your favorite artists or your favorite songwriters? Who are like some of your biggest influences?
God, Will Dillon is a big influence.
Yeah, I was kind of getting into that.
I was never like a fanatic, but I mean, no, you know, he definitely. A lot of people will say that you know, I was young and impressionable when I heard that stuff for the first time. So yeah, it really kind of shaped. That's one of the things that shaped my worldview. Also, because he was such a big. You know, he was such an original thinker when he first came on the scene, and he just like really shook up the world, you know. So that he was big. Buddy Holly still, Jimi Hendrix, you know, like all that kind of banner names from the 50s and 60s. But I mean, like songwriters, you know, there's like so many. There's a guy called Percy Mayfield. Have you ever heard of any of his songs? You should check him out. He's one of the best songwriters that ever lived.
Percy Mayfield,
yeah. He did a song back in the late 40s called Please Send Me Someone to Love. Just check this song out. It's like it's so profound for its time. And
I will.
Anyway, he's great. I don't know, Harlan Howard is another one. If you don't know his stuff, you should check him out.
Okay.
Brian Wilson, I went to school on him for a while.
Yeah.
You know, and there's always great. I mean, there are always great people on the scene.
Yeah.
You know, and I really like your stuff too.
Thanks,
you're really
man.
Great.
Thank you.
You know, I'm not like real in the loop all the time with, you know, year after year. I don't really, but I'm kind of got my ear open to stuff. There are a lot of records I like that kind of fall outside of the, you know, like there's not really songcraft involved.
Yeah.
Like there's this album that I really like. This is a pretty well-known album, but it's called Donuts by Jay Dilla. This is a record that's really been influential in the past few years, and it's kind of sound collage. It's rooted in hip-hop.
Yeah.
I like stuff. There's another guy that I heard about, this guy from New Yorker magazine, a guy called Mad Lib. I like a lot of stuff like that. I like a lot of jazzy stuff, and I don't know. It's just my mind goes whoosh when somebody asks me what music I like. There's just like too much of it.
There is too much of it. It's crazy. Do you have I'm finding it harder to like concentrate as I get older, like in terms of just like I used to have better focus. Like I could focus on something and see it through. Now I feel like my focus is kind of drifting a little bit. Do you have any issues with that?
Yeah, I think it's just information overload.
Too much information.
I have too much in my head already.
Yeah.
You know, I'm kind of full up.
Yeah.
Like as much as I can comprehend is like already in there, but
yeah.
Again, there's really good stuff all the time. Like I heard a little bit of Brittany Howard's record. That sounds really fucking good. People say, you know, that there's no vitality left in rock music, but I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's true.
It's not true at all. It's like people aren't really picking up on it, but like the way they used to, but it's still great. The music's still alive and well. It's not the music that's not alive and well.
Where did your name come from?
My grandfather was Marshall Crenshaw, and my middle name is Howard, which is my dad.
That's a great name, Marshall Crenshaw, don't you think? Aren't you stoked
it's
about
got
it? It's got like it sounds like legendary. Dude.
Yeah, it's kind of musical sounding.
Yeah.
Too. Plus, there's an SH right in the middle of both.
Marshall Crenshaw.
Somebody told me that a long time ago. They're like, wow, that's a fucking great name.
It is a great name.
I mean, you know.
You didn't have to change it.
No. But it is my real name.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Are there any shows you want to promote? Your tour with the Smithereens, maybe, or?
I'm out there with the Smithereens.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I love that. That's another story. But anyway, yeah, I fill in. I'm one of the lead singers. I do duty as a lead singer with the Smithereens, and along with Robin Wilson from the Gin Blossoms. We're not on stage at the same time, but like he does some of the shows and I do most of them so far. But anyway, I do that, and I've got my own tour dates with the Bottle Rockets. Have you ever heard of them?
Mm-mm.
They're a great rock band, one of the best. And Brian Henneman, there's a great songwriter right there, Brian Henneman of the Bottle Rockets.
I think I have heard of them, actually, now that you say that.
He was with Wilco for half a minute. He was on their first album.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the band for a blink of an eye, but then he went off and started the Bottle Rockets. But I've toured with them every year since 2011.
Wow.
I do like a couple months every year with them.
Usually come to City Winery in New York. I see you play with them there a lot.
Yeah. I don't think there is a City Winery right this minute, though.
Not right this minute.
Yeah. We're going to play somewhere in New York, I think. But, well, we're at the City Winery in D.C., me and the Bottle Rockets, and I think the City Winery in Philly, too. I just played there with a trio.
Do you like like being on the road?
I don't like being on the road, no, but I like playing shows. I think mostly I'm going to keep it in the Northeast as, going forward, because I just was in the Midwest. Drove through a blizzard one day. I didn't like that.
You go to Europe?
Nope, I never really got a toehold there.
No?
No. How about you?
That's
yeah,
where
you, of course. Everybody but me.
my thing started there.
What?
My thing started in France.
Oh, cut it out.
I got popular in France, so I toured France a lot. But
Didn't work out.
I'm trying to get back there. I'm supposed to go.
France
tour.
is maybe my favorite country.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
The French people, right?
Yeah.
They don't take any shit.
They're amazing.
They got balls. I really
and they
like the French.
Intense art. They like, they're intense.
Yeah.
They're passionate.
Uh-huh. No, I would love it if I was going there on any kind of regular basis. But no, I never got anything started over there.
Not yet. There's still time.
If there really was a shot at it, I would. That's someplace I would travel to.
Yeah.
It would be worth it to me just on a self-satisfaction kind of level. But I'm not going to go over there and kill myself over trying to do it now,
Nah.
But if the door kind of opened, I would go.
Yeah. Is there things that you think about, like, I wish I knew then what I know now, like with your early career, any kind of...
A lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, me too. Mainly that I should have just been more grateful for everything.
Uh-huh.
Like I was a little too entitled in some kind of way.
Yeah.
But like your ego almost has to sort of facilitate your rising to these different stations, I feel like, so it bolsters you up in these kind of phony ways, maybe in a way that that make you kind of like not handle things as well as you would have liked to.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to have self-belief in the first place to go out the door in the morning, and
just even every single second.
And you have to have, everybody's, got some kind of, actually, I think it's healthy to have at least some narcissism.
Well, there's healthy narcissism.
Yeah.
It only gets unhealthy when you're trying to destroy others. In a covert way.
But when you're young, you don't know how to control all of that.
No.
Yeah. So what you said, I wish that I knew more about that thing in particular. But the other thing, if I could, talk to myself from back then, I would say just try it. Don't worry, okay?
Yeah, don't worry.
Don't think that you're fucked, because you're not. Just keep marching. That's what I would have said to myself back then.
I hope you're saying that to me right now.
I am.
I'm taking that.
If you want to take it that way,
I want to take
can.
it. Don't worry, you're not fucked. Because half the time I'm like, you walk around worried that you're fucked.
No.
right?
Sure. Yeah. But no, I mean, I don't. You know, I don't know.
I'll take it.
I mean, no. If you want to take it that way,
I'm gonna take it that way.
I would.
Yeah.
Because you're talented.
Yeah.
And you figure it out.
I'll figure it out. Yeah.
You're already figuring it out.
I'm figuring it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working on it. Yeah, I got a new album I'm working on too, so working on a song and then singing it all night last night and going is this any good? At the end, but I think you just gotta do a lot of stuff. I think don't overthink it in the moment. Just keep going and just keep putting it out there,
I guess, that's the thing. When you really do the good stuff is when you get to that point where you're just you're not going to fuss over it anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe you were fussing over it, but now you've gotten through all that and you're just okay.
Yeah.
Up, that's as much as I know about it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, man. It's actually really good.
Okay.
I know you're in a little bit of a zone because of the issues with the re-release, but it was awesome, everything that you talked about.
Thank you, Joseph, and thanks for asking me.
Yeah, man.
I really appreciate your interest.
You're a great artist, and we appreciate you coming on.
Great guest.
Yeah.
Thank you, fellas.
Thanks, brother. Have a great day, and I hope that re-release comes out strong and
that's
good.
a good thought. Okay.
It will. It'll come out the way it's supposed to.
It will, yeah.
Well, just take your own advice. Don't worry. You're not fucked.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, this is Joseph Arthur. Thanks for checking out Come to Where I'm From. Please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/come-to-where-I'm-from. We are an independent podcast, and any contributions you can make are greatly appreciated.